Governor Rhee, what keeps you up at night?
First, my apology to Ueda-san, but to me,
Governor Rhee, I mean, South Korea's economy is, of course, highly reliant on trade. Putting aside the deals that each government can strike with the Trump administration, what can central banks, in your position, do to shield economies from the impact of trade tariffs?
actually, about the tariffs' impact on inflation, our current inflation is well stabilized around 2%, and we believe tariff tends to be deflationary rather than inflationary for three reasons. One is Korea is not likely to use retaliatory tariff. Second, we import 22% of our import from China, and recently export price of China has been falling at 5% a year for several years, and we believe that it will continue to do so. And at this moment, our growth rate is 0.8%, which is well below our potential growth rate. So aggregate demand pressure is much lower. So our problem is not the inflation itself, but the gross impact of tariff.
So what does that mean you'll do going forward?
Yeah, actually, we have been in an easing cycle, and we cut our interest rate 100 BP from last October, and we will continue to be in an easing cycle given our growth rate. But recently, financial stability risk has been rising, especially housing price in metropolitan area is increasing very fast. So we are keeping an eye on this financial stability risk in deciding the pace and the timing of the further cuts.
The biggest risk stemming from protectionist trade policy, actually, for the global economy and for South Korea's?
Can you just...
The biggest risk stemming from trades and protectionist measures?
You know, Korea has quite an export-driven economy. So whatever the global fragmentation has a serious impact, not only direct impacts through the U.S. tariff, but also indirect impacts through China, Mexico, Canada. And we easily can, it really depends on what's going to happen on July 9th. We are actually waiting for the result, but we don't know what's going to happen. But for example, like if the tariff goes back to 26% retaliatory tariff that was announced in April 2nd, and then also with a lot of sectoral tariff which affect our economy, aluminum, steel, and cars, we can easily say that it has an impact larger than close to 1% in our GDP growth rate. And depending on how long it lasts, I think we have to adjust to the new supply chain, so the impact will be larger. So, but I hope that scenario won't come.
What is the most concern for the Bank of Korea? Is it a stalling South Korea exports, slowdown in global trade, or a downturn in the U.S. economy?
It's all linked, right? It's all linked, right? So it's a global economy slowdown. And one thing, I mentioned some negative sides only, but one positive side, I don't know if it's positive or not, but Korean companies has been preparing for the supply diversification long time ago before the tariff, U.S. tariffs started to, because we have some issues with China, and then also Chinese industry has become very competitive. So we had to relocate our production site from China to elsewhere. So relatively speaking, we are well prepared. And second, still good thing is that we have some strong industries such as semiconductor, which benefit from the AI technology development. So I hope that we can manage it. But on the other hand, given we look at the sheer size of the export dependence, we will be significantly affected.
Governor Rhee, as the only governor here representing a non-reserve currency country, how concerned are you about fragmentation of the global financial system and the risk at the end of the day that the U.S. may be less willing to provide dollar liquidity in a future financial shock?
Oh, no. But I think I mentioned that we are quite vulnerable to the fragmentation. But in reality, as a small country, it's a pity that we can raise our voice, but in reality, we cannot change the course. So we have to probably take it as an environment and to adapt to it. What matters is we talk about economic fragmentation, but for a country like us, the most serious issue is combined with security. And for that issue, let me stop here because I don't want to go further. But as for the dollar liquidity support, as demonstrated during the global financial crisis and pandemic period, the standing dollar swap lines with 5 international financial centers and the 9 ad hoc temporary swap lines for the 9 non-reserve currencies. That was crucial in restoring the stability in the global world. And if another global dollar shortage hits, I believe that the U.S. Fed will extend their swap lines again, which is very important. And but one other problem for a country like us is we know that the U.S. provide ad hoc swap lines as long as there is a global dollar shortage. But issue is what happens if there is our own problem and there is no global dollar shortage. Our understanding is that Fed cannot extend the swap lines in that case, and we have to self-defense ourselves. That is why I think having a adequate, sufficient level of reserves is very important. And recently, thanks to the introduction of the FEMA repo facility by the Fed, actually these reserves become much more effective tool to defend ourselves.
Jay Powell, on fragmentation.
Well, I guess I'll just agree with what Chang Yang said, which is, or point out that nothing has changed relative to our swap lines. We still have the same authorities, and we're still prepared to use them in situations where it's within our legal authorities and where we think it makes sense. So that is, we're aware that that's a big contribution that we can and do and will continue to make to global financial stability.
Governor Rhee, what keeps you up at night?
First, my apologies to Ueda-san, but to me,
I didn't sleep well last night. There's a reason for this. Governor Yi was sitting next to me during dinner, and he told me that espresso contains less caffeine than coffee. So I immediately had a cup of espresso.
I meant the total amount of caffeine rather than caffeine per ounce, okay?
Anyway, this is a joke.
Scores on the espresso will be settled.
I think one concern that I have is unique to our problem is a perception gap of the public due to very rapid structural changes. For example, a decade ago, our potential growth rate is around 3%, but now it's well below 2%. But people still think that we have to grow above 3% in normal times, and that actually expedite their demand for the more stimulus monetary policy and fiscal policy, while we need is a structural reform. But on the other hand, if I keep on talking about structural reform, I don't know how far I can go on discussing this structural issue because some people say that it's well above my mandate. But I think what is important for our country is not only the cyclical issue, but how to adapt to these structural changes. And that is a very difficult challenge.
Governor Rhee?
I can say something, but I don't know whether my successor will take it seriously. But given that I mentioned structural issues, I hope that the Bank of Korea continue to raise voice outside of just monetary policy for general economic issues.
And Governor Bailey?
Be humble. So we're exercising.